Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. You saw the thumbnail, you know what we're doing today. So in last week's video where I did my gel manicure, I had stopped and I had picked up some of these sponge-tipped eyeshadow applicators for the purpose of buffing in some multi-chrome shadow over top of my gel polish. And it got me thinking, the last time that I actually used these for eyeshadow application was probably in my early 20s before I discovered makeup brushes. And I'm now in my early 40s, which means it's been a few decades since I've touched one of these to my eye. So I thought I would go ahead and try to apply an entire eyeshadow look using only sponge tip applicators. Do people even use these for makeup application anymore? I can't believe they still sell them. I need to get my hair out of my face and off of my body because I'm so hot right now. As soon as I turn off the air conditioning, I just immediately start sweating. So let me get this shit up and out of the way, and then we can get started and see how bad I fucked this up today. So the eyeshadow palette that I'm going to be using today is the Colored Rain Queen of Hearts palette. I played with this once or twice. I love the color story. It's very warm toned. It's got oranges, it's got pinks, it's got golds. And then I'm actually wearing a Colored Rain lipstick today already. This is Meishi Rain from the Safari Rain collection. This is one of my favorite nudes. I love it so much. Let's dig into this palette with, oh my God, I can't believe I'm about to do this. And in case you haven't seen one of these in a long time, this is a sponge tip eyeshadow applicator. It's double-ended. You've got the side that has a little bit more of a rounded edge, and then a side that's slightly more pointed. I think that I'm gonna use this end for like blending. I'm gonna use this end for something a little bit more kind of like pinpoint under the eyes, the outer corner, that kind of stuff. And I'm going to start with the shade Princess, which is kind of like this mauve-y tone shade. I don't want to get too much eyeshadow on this applicator because I think it's already going to be hard enough to blend on its own, even with a little bit of product. I think if I have too much shadow on there, it's going to be really bad. I've gone ahead and I've already primed my eyes. I've got the Urban Decay eyeshadow primer in Eden. I've got some powder down under the eyes. I don't know what the fallout situation is going to be with one of these compared to a brush. It might be a little bit less fallout-y since it is a sponge and it's kind of absorbing some of that eyeshadow. So we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and start by pressing the shadow into kind of like the crease area, the lower part of like my transition area, I guess, and just kind of press and pat it on. God, it's so crazy. That feels so weird. And I mean, when I started wearing makeup, this is pretty much where I started. This is what you used, you know? Your eyeshadows came with one of these sponge tip applicators, and this is what you use to apply it and to blend it out. It's been a long fucking time. And I can't believe they even still sell these, to tell you the truth. I was in Sally Beauty Supply, and I was looking for these specifically for that nail video, and yeah, they had them. I think they were maybe like $1. It was like a 6-pack, I think. But yeah, once I finished up with that video, I was like, you know what? I have not used these on my eyes in almost 20 years, so let's go ahead and give this a go. I mean, it's blending okay so far, to tell you the truth. I think that if you pack the shadow on, which is what I normally do anyway, and then just kind of softly tap out to blend the edges there, I don't think it's looking too bad, really. I don't think you get as much color payoff right off the bat as using a brush, but I think if the eyeshadow formula is like decently buildable, you shouldn't really have a problem. It might take a few minutes longer because you have to build up multiple layers, but now I was kind of thinking about doing one eye with the sponge tip applicators and then one eye with a brush and just see which one turned out the best, if there were any kind of differences there. But I am going to be wearing this look to work all day, and I'm not trying to have, you know, two different looking eyes when I am going to be seen by the general public, you know. Now, do any of you guys actually still use these sponge tip applicators for applying your eyeshadow, or is this like some crazy thing that you've never seen before, or something you haven't thought about in a long time? time. I worked with a couple of Avon ladies at a Denny's several years ago, and there were always Avon catalogs sitting on the break table, and I would buy some stuff from time to time. And whenever I would buy eyeshadow, there would always be a little sponge tip applicator that came with the eyeshadows. But I don't know if that's really a thing anymore, because even drugstore brands like Elf and Wet n Wild, if you're at a drugstore, they actually have brushes from those brands right alongside the makeup. So yeah, even those brands, I think they know that people want to use brushes instead of application methods like this. And one time I was at a Mary Kay party. Is that a thing anymore? And the girl that was hosting it, she was doing some like makeup applications on people, but she was using a straight up fucking Q-tip to apply eyeshadow on somebody's dry eyelids. And I was just like, is that really happening right now? This isn't looking too bad so far, actually. I think we've got a pretty decent blend. I mean, it does take a little bit more effort to blend that out, but not that much more effort than using a brush, so who knows? This might be a thing. But this eyeshadow formula is really, really good, so I mean, it pretty much blends itself. It probably doesn't matter what you use. You could probably blend it out with your fingertips, actually. And then taking that same color to smoke out the lower lash line. This is definitely a little bit more difficult underneath the eye than it is on the actual lid. You can just kind of feel the plastic underneath the sponge almost kind of poking into the skin a little bit. Again, I think it's just going to take a little bit more effort with the blending. Then kind of connecting the top to the bottom. And again, this color does build up really well, even with the sponge. I think it's really just gonna kind of depend on the formula. And then let's go ahead and hit those inner corners as well. I'm gonna go ahead and deepen up the crease some more. I wanna use the shade Ladyship, which is this purple color down here on the bottom row. Let's start by pressing that into that outer corner there. Now, so far, I'm really not hating this, especially for the initial laydown of this color out here in the outer corner, because sometimes I feel like when I'm using a brush to kind of lay down color here, it can almost like explode out too much, and then I end up with like this darker color like kind of down here in this area, if that makes sense. And while again I think that using a sponge, you definitely have to build colors up in layers, for the initial laydown of the product, not hating it so much. I think the difficult part here is going to be blending out these harsh edges here, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see what we can do with it. I'm just kind of almost like tap and dragging the very, very edge of that shade there. And then I'll probably end up going into that first shade that I use and kind of like tapping over that just to make that blend a little bit softer there. Tap that along the edge right there. Let's see if we can do this left-handed without fucking things up too bad for this eye here. Take that into the inner corners as well. I think that this is going to end up being like kind of a halo smoky eye. And I have an hour before I have to leave for work, so can't get too much crazier with it than it is right now. I think as far as fallout goes, it's pretty much the same as with like a brush application. There is some fallout underneath my eyes, but I laid down a shit ton of powder there, so it should be able to wipe away pretty easily. Yeah, that's not looking too bad there. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the lid. I'm gonna use the shade Your Majesty, which is, where are we? Right there. It looks kind of like a shimmery bronze color, maybe like a rose gold. And I'm gonna take that just on the sponge. I'm not gonna wet it. I'm not gonna use a glitter primer. And pop that right onto the center of the lid. I think we're gonna have to do a couple of dips in. Where you put it is kind of where it goes, and then once you start to blend it out a little bit, it loses the intensity. So you kind of have to go back in a few times with this one, I think. This is definitely a shade that I would normally put on with my finger. And I think that this is the kind of shade that really just kind of pops and gets more intense over top of a glitter primer, which I'm not doing today. Again, I just wanted to see how this did on its own, on the lid. Yeah, almost like a press and swipe, like barely a swipe. And then on the center of the lower lash line as well. Yeah, let me get up close so that you can see the fallout situation down there. There's definitely quite a bit. But again, it's eyeshadow, it's gonna happen. And then there is a highlight shade in this palette as well. That's a shade Crown up here in the corner. I'm gonna use that for both my inner corners and to highlight the brow bone a little bit too. Okay, so that is how things are looking. That is eyeshadow applied with sponge tip applicators. Let me go ahead and clean up this fallout, get some eyeliner on my waterline, mascara, all that stuff, and I'll be right back with the final look. Okay, so that is everything finished. I used some Night Moth on the waterline, mascara, another coat of lipstick, and overall I think it did okay. Now, do I think that I would use sponge tip applicators to apply eyeshadow on a daily? No, because I feel like the colors are just a little bit more faded than what I would get with a brush application. I think it's just really easy to pack the color on with a brush and a lot easier to blend it out. Blending was definitely a little bit of an issue, especially with the darker shades in this look. But again, I think that it did okay. I think in a pinch, if you didn't have any brushes and somebody handed you a sponge, could you create an eyeshadow look with it? Yes. But I'm not surprised that these aren't really used that much anymore. But it was fun to play around with. It was fun to try out an old application method again and see if it worked for me. I think I did an okay job. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you guys on the next one.